Good morning, children, and a very warm welcome to you all. Here's the summary of the poem Winter.
So the first stanza goes: The mustard seed is in flower, streaking through the countryside. Band on yellow band, acre on acre of light. Here, in these lines, the poet describes the beauty of winter. He says that it is the season when the mustard plants flower. The yellow color of the mustard flowers spreads through the countryside and seems to cover half the world. Half this world is mustard, the other half is rye. The mustard scent is sharp, so is the smell of rye. And therefore the poet says that it seems that half the world is covered with mustard and the other half is covered with rye. So children, the mustard plants and the rye plants are two crops that are mostly grown during the winter season. And so the poet says that the mustard scent is so sharp and so is the smell of rye. The poet is standing there watching the beauty of the mustard plants grown everywhere. And he says that the smell, the scent of the mustard and rye is very sharp. Yet no one's heard the scarecrow sneeze, and no one's seen him cry. Here the poet says that the scarecrow, which has been put there in the center of the field, does not sneeze or cry because of the scent of the mustard or rye or because of the cold. Maybe the scarecrow is used to or standing there, watching through the fields. Next stanza. Mustard surrounds the kikar tree and swallows up its fallen thorns. The poet says, the mustard plants seem to change the world around them as they cover the fallen kikar tree thorns. There is a kikar tree in that field, and the mustard plants that are growing to the far land cover the kikar tree and the fallen thorns of that tree. It slithers past the kettle shed, it splashes past the village pond. And then the poet talks about the mustard plants, that they grow around the kettle shed and the pond and extends towards the temple. It splashes past the village pond, past haunted grove, abandoned house, the ruined, ill-balanced temple spire. And so the poet says that the mustard plants grow to all the extent of that countryside. The fields are so vast that they reach up to the haunted grove, abandoned house, and the ruined, ill-balanced temple spire. Out greening grass, out yellowing light, December here is on fire. And so the poet says, the blooming of the bright yellow mustard flowers changes the very look of December, and the whole world seems to be on fire. Now, children, December here is on fire could have two meanings to it. The yellow bright color of the mustard, and so the poet says December here is on fire, and the other is the cold waves of the December that makes a person lit a fire for warmth. So the poet says December here is on fire. So as any cold night would warn you, the other characteristic of this time of the year is cold. The poet says the bitter cold makes the fire seem ineffective and unable to provide sufficient warmth. And so the poet says, a dry leaf fire, a rice straw fire, will certainly not burn you. The fire, which is not that warm, it seems cold, and a dry leaf and rice straw fire, it is not enough to burn you. A dry leaf fire, a rice straw fire will certainly not burn you. Music lovers shiver and quite forget to sing. The ground has turned so hard indeed, the watchman's footsteps ring. The poet says, this cold causes many changes in the lives of people. It causes music lovers to forget singing, turns the ground hard, so hard that you can even hear the watchman's footsteps ring. The sesamum has ripened. There's a white touch to the grass. The poet here talks about the sesamum, also known as sesame, that has ripened, and therefore now the grass looks white, as the flowers of a sesamum are white in color. The whitening of the grass, along with the comparison of the grass to the glass, brings alive the sense of the freezing winter. Walk carefully, says Scarecrow. The dew has turned to glass. But it won't last forever. Winter too shall pass. The Scarecrow, who watches over the fields, has seen the different seasons come and go. The poet also reassures that people, that everything changes, and this cold winter too shall pass. And so this brings us to the end of this poem with a beautiful line, that winter too shall pass. The poet not only talks about winter here, he also talks about the difficult days that do not last forever. Just like winter time, and it changes and a new season comes along our way. In the same way, difficult days also do not last forever, and we move ahead for good times. So children, this was the end of a very beautiful poem on winter.